class, but for now, based on Amazon, this is too premature to address that, which is why they had to create another role. This is before before the internet was here. All right, let's go ahead and turn to the McGee versus International Life Insurance case. And then we'll do Hansen. Aren't we excited? Yay! We understand. It's not as hard as they said it was going to be. Right? Not yet. Well, we're doing the hardest part now. Not that I'm arrogant, but it's the way that I'm teaching it. The reason the other section is going to be confused is he teaches it the traditional way. He doesn't tell you this. He makes you figure it out on your own. You have to figure it out. That's how I was taught. You figure it out. And some people don't figure it out because it's like a puzzle. Like, they don't. And it's not because they're not smart. It's just like, it's like the material is set up to hide the ball, unfortunately. And sometimes people just don't make the connection. And it's not, again, that they're not smart, it's just really backwards the way it's set up. So it's not us. Because I'll tell you, as a student, I didn't figure it out. So my civil procedure story is I sat in we had a courtyard, and I was trying not to cry because I was like, I'm not gonna cry at school. Like, I don't want people to be like, what's her problem? She's a big kid, big baby. But I was about to cry because I knew I was going to fail. So I understood the individual parts, but I didn't understand how everything worked together, like to be able to apply it to a that pattern. And I hated feeling stupid because I'm like, I understand what personal jurisdiction is, but I don't get how all this goes together. So this girl, who is to this day I love her, name is Jennifer Raymond. You can Google her. She's awesome. She graduated #1 in our class. We didn't know that at the time because it was first semester. And she was kind of, I was she's like, what's wrong, da, 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 in the little courtyard, and I just was like, and she's like, whoa. So she's like, it's okay, she's like, here, and she slid me her outline explained that. She's like, here, she's like, I'll just print out another copy, you can have my outline, it's really not that hard. I read this girl's outline, the exam was 2 days, I straight up got a full-blown A on that exam. And I was like, oh my, so I still tell her that I owe you my life, Jennifer, because I didn't understand it, and I realized it wasn't that I was slow, it's just the way the professor taught it to me. It was, she should have been teaching the class instead of my professor. But, so it is a hard class, but it's hard because typically it's just the way that it's taught traditionally. Makes it harder than it needs to be. All right. So we know that the McGee case and the Hansen case were decided after International Shoe, and these cases are examples of the Supreme Court applying that two-part International Shoe case to other fact patterns, essentially. Remember, International Shoe stands for the idea that absent consent or minimum contacts between the forum, meaning the state, and the non-resident defendant, those things basically are necessary in order to assert impersonum or personal jurisdiction over defendants. You gotta have minimum contacts, or they need to be domiciled there, physically present, and so on. So let's do the McGee case first. Attorney Church, since you gave the facts in the last one, Attorney Lineweaver, can you just tell me just the facts from McGee, please?
Close enough.
Yeah.
A resident of California purchased a life insurance policy, and that was then purchased by International Life Insurance Company, offering to insure them, but they were out of, not California, Texas.
Okay.
And she dies.
Yep.
And the family, the beneficiary, wants to get the life insurance money, and the company in Texas
Won't pay. This is a big deal. I'm trying to bury my loved one. You won't give me the money? Are you serious? Right? So I'm just going to say a little bit louder. So McGee, as she stated, is the beneficiary of her deceased son. Her son, the deceased, is Lowell Franklin. Lowell Franklin is the one that has the life insurance policy. So McGee sues the defendant, International, what were they called? International Life, which is a Texas corporation in California. right? So Lyle Franklin, the dead son, is a resident of California. That's relevant. So he's a resident of California. He purchased a life insurance policy from an insurer, subsequently bought by International Life. So Lyle purchases this policy from someone, and then that policy is bought by another company, which is International Life, which then mails, meaning International Life, a reinsurance certificate to Franklin in California offering to insure him, okay? He accepted the offer, and from that time until his death, in, I think it's 1950, in 1950, he paid all his premiums by mail, Lowell did, from his California home to International Life's Texas office, okay? So he paid his premiums until he died. When McGee, the beneficiary, notified International Life, look, my son died, I'm ready to collect the payment on the life insurance policy. They refused to pay, claiming he committed suicide, and so they weren't required to pay her, the beneficiary. So neither the original insurer or International Life has an office or agent in California. So that's kind of a big deal, right? They don't have an office or an agent. So if you don't have your principal place of business in California, what are you going to do? And you want to hold a suit there, you're going to try to figure out if there's general or specific jurisdiction. For this class, we're just focusing on whether or not there's specific jurisdiction, okay? So some important facts that were not included in your summary of your textbook that I'd like to share just to help in your understanding of the case is that McGee sued International Life in California. Second, McGee served International Life, meaning service of process, notified them of the lawsuit by mail in Texas at its corporate home. So they did serve International Life notice of the lawsuit in Texas where they're incorporated. International Life declined to appear in that California lawsuit. And what happened, McGee obtained a default judgment. And remember, default judgment is just plaintiff files a case against defendant doesn't show up, plaintiff automatically wins. Okay, so again, International Life did not show up to the California lawsuit, and McGee received a default judgment. So McGee, which is now the plaintiff, now takes this California judgment to Texas and basically says, I want to enforce it. Similar to what we saw in Penoyer. Hey, I've got a binding judgment here. I need you to enforce it, get me my money back. State of Texas. So International Life said, no. They said they attacked the judgment, arguing that the California court lacked personal jurisdiction in an effort to resist having to pay. So that's what's going on here. So they remember the full faith and credit clause says that if the California judgment is legitimate, then it's binding. Then Texas has to help him and honor it and enforce it by their resident, which at this time is International Life Corporation. So again, you have the person in California saying, hey, Texas, I need you to help me get my money. And the Texas resident, which is International Life Corporation, is saying, no, don't make us pay this money, Your Honor. That California court lacked personal jurisdiction over us, okay? So what were Attorney Church, what were International Life's contacts with the forum state? Can you tell me, I guess an easier way to say this, can you make the argument on why California should have personal jurisdiction over International Life?
Because the basis of the suit was a contract that was federally related.
Okay, what else? Come on, you're an attorney, make that argument. Why should California have jurisdiction over International Life? So you said the contract was delivered in California?
California residents would be at a severe disadvantage if they had to go to Texas to sue International Life, even though they bought life insurance and lived in California.
Very good. What other facts do you see that support the notion that, yes, this case should be filed in California? I mean, California has jurisdiction over International Life. So you have the contract was delivered in California. It would be a grave inconvenience for California residents to have to travel to Texas to defend themselves. Just look at the facts. What else do you see that ties them to California? Attorney Lineweaver.
So that they were like accepting payments from the resident of California.
Yeah, absolutely. So the premiums, right, were being mailed. You know that, Attorney Church. The premiums were mailed from California. And what else? Anything else? There's one more.
Well, he was a resident of California.
Yeah, when he died, right? Those are all relevant. Okay? So contract delivered in California, premiums mailed from California, insured as a resident of California when he died. Those are the arguments I'm going to make to the judge. Your Honor, California clearly should be the state that has jurisdiction to decide this case. What about the case against personal jurisdiction? Either Attorney Church or Lineweaver. What are 2 or 3 things you can say, Your Honor, no, this is why California doesn't have personal jurisdiction? You're representing international.
Neither the original company that sold Franklin the policy or International Life had any agents or business in California.
Yeah, that's a super strong argument. Your Honor, come on. The original insurance company and International Life, we don't solicit California for business. We don't even have an agent there. Like, why are you trying to make us come to California and sue and defend ourselves, right? And then second, International Life never solicited or conducted business in California with the exception of this policy that is at issue in this lawsuit. So it's not like they're International Shoe where they're conducting business in California, they're renting they're not. All they're doing is the guy's mailing a little premium. They don't do business in California. They're like, we don't have sufficient contacts. So in this McGee case, what we see, the court's holding is that the court held, obviously for the plaintiff McGee, we know from reading the case, and stated that the due process clause, remember that 14th and 5th Amendment due process clause, did not preclude California from entering a judgment binding on International Life. So again, the court held for the plaintiff McGee and stated that the due process clause did not preclude California from entering a judgment that is binding on International Life. That is binding on International Life. Specifically on page 83, the direct quote is, "It is sufficient for purposes of due process that the suit was based on a contract which has substantial connection with the state." So again, the court says that it's sufficient enough that the suit was based on a contract, right, which has substantial connection with the state, meaning California. The contract, they said, was delivered in California, the premiums were mailed from there, and the insured was a resident of California when they died. So the court said that's enough to establish minimum contacts. So in this McGee case, what we see is a shift from the court's allegiance in this case. There are 3 stakeholders in any lawsuit if you're trying to determine personal jurisdiction. It's going to be the plaintiff, the defendant, and the state. The plaintiff's stake in this lawsuit is pretty obvious. The defendant's state is obvious. Don't make me come out of state to defend myself. And the state's interest is obvious. You know, the state of California wants to be able to protect their residents from being screwed by people that are doing business in their state from other states and having to go to those states to travel when there's been some type of legal wrong. So there's 3 stakeholders when you're trying to determine personal jurisdiction: plaintiff, defendant, and the state, also referred to as the forum in your text interchangeably. So how does the court justify its deference then to the state of California in this case? If you look at the bottom of page 89, you have your answer in terms of how this court justifies its deference to the state of California. The bottom of page 89, it says, quote, "It cannot be denied that California has a manifest interest in providing effective means of redress for its residents when their insurers refuse to pay clients." How does the court explain away the fairness component? With respect to the defendant, if you look again at the bottom of page 89, in terms of fairness, the court says, hey, this is fair. They say specifically, modern transportation and communication have made it much less burdensome for a party sued to defend himself in a state where he engages in economic activity. So essentially what they said is we don't practice law in a vacuum, right? Additionally, the court says that there is no contention that the respondent did not have adequate notice of the suit, because they did, or sufficient time to prepare for the suit. So they're like, they weren't placed at a disadvantage. You know, they knew they had this business they were doing in California. They knew a suit was filed. They chose not to show up, and they should have, right? So the takeaway from this case, what's important for you to remember, is that it established beyond question the state's authority to exercise jurisdiction. So what's important to remember from this case is it established the state's authority to exercise jurisdiction over non-resident defendants in lawsuits resulting from their activities within that state. So that kind of solidified that as law. So again, what's important is it established the state's authority to exercise jurisdiction over non-resident defendants. So to exercise jurisdiction over non-resident defendants in lawsuits resulting from their activities in that state. So in a lawsuit resulting from their activities within that state. We know that this case is a specific jurisdiction case because the plaintiff's claim failure to pay insurance benefits arises out of the insurance company's contacts with the state of California. So that was an easy specific jurisdiction case. Could the court hear any claim against the International Life Company in California? No, because the court doesn't have general jurisdiction, they only have specific jurisdiction, meaning based on the facts, the only contact we see is that one client in the state of California. That's not enough to say they have substantial compliance, not just that one. Okay? We're doing well. All right, how much time do we have?
5 minutes.
Let's go for broke, right? I'm kidding, I don't like to rush through case. Let me think about it. Do we have time to do Hanson? Are we ready? No? Yes? I'm kind of offended that people are like, that's like a paragraph of a case. Like, really? It's a page. It's a page. So I don't want to rush through it, so I'll wait and add it to the next. But we might as well at least do a quick mini review. I really don't want you all to get lost. Wouldn't it be great if everybody made an A? That's never happened. But we're allowed to do it. Make it happen. All right, so what is specific jurisdiction, anyone? Yes.
It deals directly with the defendant's activity in whatever state they're proceeding the suit in, and there has to be minimal contacts.
Excellent. So she said specific jurisdiction is a lawsuit that arises out of the non-resident defendant's contacts with the state, and you have to establish that that non-resident has minimum contacts with the state. How do we determine minimum contacts? We look at the extent and nature of those activities, and what question do we ask?
Is it fair? To the person jurisdiction.
We ask if it's fair, right? And what's, yes?
Relatedness to the cause of action.
Relatedness to the cause of action, and where's the other one? Yes?
If it was systematic and continuous.
Yes, if the contacts are systematic and continuous. Don't forget that. General jurisdiction, which we'll talk about later on page 88 in your text, but that just requires substantial contacts. So a perfect example of general jurisdiction, McDonald's. McDonald's has Starbucks, substantial contacts with all states. There are a gazillion of them. So I can sue McDonald's any stinking where I want to for something that happened in Texas. I can sue them here in Kentucky. I can sue Starbucks where I want to because they have substantial contacts in all the states. And that's just the reality. But that's what a general jurisdiction looks like. I mean, they're benefiting big time from us running over to the student center and getting lattes and coffee, right? So that's a broad example. I think that's it. So you understand how the two-part test expands Penoyer, where you don't have to physically be present in the state necessarily, or a resident, meaning domicile. If you have sufficient contacts with the state, that state can assert jurisdiction over you if the lawsuit arises from those contacts within the state. And we all think that's fair, right? You're gonna do business in our state, if there's a lawsuit that comes up, you will defend yourself here. All right, I will see you tomorrow. Oh, before I forget, so this meeting's only from 10:30 to 11.